Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Dogs Down South on a Tuesday night. It is Georgia, Florida hate week. Man, this week right here is always fun to preview. It used to not be this way because we weren't very good, probably in about, I would say, if I'm remembering as a kid, late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah, we were getting our butt whooped by Florida. So it's been a lot more encouraging to talk about this week as of the past few years, obviously. Going to have a couple guests tonight. Fish will be on a little bit later, but here's Richman. What's up, Richman? How are you, buddy?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's fall, so I don't know about up there, but we're starting to get a little breeze. I don't know if we're going to change the temperature, but we're actually getting some airflow, so that's great for Florida. Hey, I want to start the night off first by saying if you have not already done so, make sure you go follow us on YouTube, Dogs Down South, trying to get to 1,000 followers. Also, Apple Podcasts. If you've not already done so, go and add the show. It's usually live 24 hours after this. I apologize about last week on the bye week. I did not get it up until probably a couple days ago because it was just sitting there waiting and it said publish. And I was like, what? I don't remember not publishing it, but it went up a little bit late. So it's up and there. So you can check out the bye week show where we recapped. Myself and Fish recapped the Texas game. We'll talk a little bit more about Texas here in a little bit as well. But make sure you go follow us. We are up to 492 listens on Apple Podcasts, which is incredible. It's only been on there for about probably 6-7 months. So that's awesome. Really exciting. Richman is Georgia, Florida week, man. I know this rivalry goes way back for you as well, but give me some memories, give me some hate, give me some, what do you think about this week?
Man, this is my favorite rivalry. I love it, and I go back at my age, late '70s, all the way through '83 when I graduated from high school. We won from '78 to '83. We won every year, and that was the longest streak we've had, I think, since. And I remember winning, but then we went through the '90s, and it was just dismal. I mean, I wouldn't even watch a Georgia Florida game. I was so sick of it. I would go shoot birds or hunting or something. I was just like, I am not watching another one of these beat downs. So the last few years have been spectacular for me.
Mm-hmm. Hard for me, man. I grew up watching this rivalry, and obviously the majority of my years were Spurrier and then Urban Meyer, and then the one that comes to mind as of late, they've been showing a lot as this week has been going on, is the Mark Richt Gator Stomp. When we stormed the field, we thought it'd be a great idea to storm the field after Noshawn Marino scored that touchdown, and we won that game barely. I think we won 34-20 or something like that. And the next year, Urban Meyer decided they beat us 49-10, and Urban Meyer decided to use every timeout he had and just let it sit. And man, that was painful. I can't say I said a lot of coarse words because I was around a lot of Florida fans / Auburn fans Auburn fans, this, they go against anybody that's playing, and Georgia Tech fans, they go against anybody who's playing Georgia. So definitely was not the best night for me, but yeah, man, this week is interesting. And we started out the year even interesting because, we thought that Florida was a team that has a really tough schedule. Didn't really know how this was going to pan out with Napier. A lot of people had this game marked as he wouldn't even be coaching this game. But I can't really say Florida has, stabilized Billy Napier's job, although maybe in some eyes they have. But I can say that he's at a spot right now where, maybe, he's good right now. I don't know. Maybe he's not. Maybe there's some things depending on this game. Who knows? But I do know that, Florida comes in with a 4-3 record, and they feel like they are in better shape than they should have been at this time. A lot of people had them at barely a couple wins maybe at this time. So snuck a few out. Maybe had some games they could have won in there. A lot of people think they could have beat Tennessee. and obviously pulled out the win against Kentucky last week. From an offense that's just kind of really, really struggling. But as we preview it, obviously, world's largest cocktail party. They tried to rename this, but I don't know. I think they're trying to rename it to the world's largest outdoor party. I don't even. Do you know what they're? Did you remember this? The whole shindig about they didn't want to have it as this name.
Everybody wants to be politically correct and woke. It's always going to be the world's largest outdoor cocktail party.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You're not going to change this name. What's up, Fish? How are you, buddy?
What's up, y'all?
What's up, man? Hey, we got a little bit early with Fish.
Better late than never.
Yeah, he comes swimming upstream at the right time, so we'll catch him.
You know it.
No release.
No release.
Just talking about Georgia Florida week, hate week, as I call it, hate week. World's largest outdoor cocktail party. Fish, do you remember what they tried to? What did they try to rename this to a couple years ago? Do you remember?
Well, first of all, they have now started calling it Florida, Georgia, instead of Georgia, Florida, and that rubs me the wrong way.
That rubs me the wrong way too.
I hate that. I always correct it whenever I see or hear somebody say that. I always correct it. I'm not sure exactly what they're trying to rename it to, but yeah, man, I grew up going to the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, so that's what it'll always be to me.
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to be because it's not going to be in Jacksonville next year. I mean, they're definitely getting a new stadium. So there's going to be some talk about, Kirby didn't share much about it in the press.
The contract's up in 25, isn't that right?
What's that?
The contract's up in 25.
Yes.
So if Kirby has his way, they'll do away with it altogether.
Yeah, he wants that extra weekend to have recruits on site. I mean, every coach wants another opportunity to get a recruit on campus. But you never know, man. They have these...
But they also get more money for this game. So that because of the NIL coming into the play, that might sway Kirby to keep it like it is.
Yeah.
Changes.
No, I agree. I don't think so, though. I mean, I think we are one of the schools that our collective is very healthy. Kirby doesn't just go paying $20 million for $20 million rosters like some teams out there. But
Ohio State.
Ohio State. Who's we're gonna see that $20 million roster on preview this weekend and see what it's about.
They're about to get Hoosier this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's you going to that stadium is crazy, man. Like crazy. Georgia opens up 16.5-point favorites. We're going to get into whether that, what we think that might look like. Georgia this year 2-5 versus the spread. So I don't know if maybe I just guess 16 this weekend. Hopefully, I don't know. I'll take 16. I'll take 16 and healthy. You know what I'm saying? But let's hop in before we get started talking about. I mean, we definitely it's Georgia Florida week, and we're going to talk about it. We got some mailbag questions that are going to dive into Georgia Florida, but let's hop in real quick. I know Richman, you weren't here last week. We talked a little bit, recap Texas. Obviously, since then Texas has went and tried to give the game away against Vanderbilt. I don't know if that means Texas isn't for real or Vanderbilt is really for real. I still think that Vanderbilt could have possibly pressed Texas a little bit more. I mean, I think they were definitely in the hunt to win that game. What do you guys think about? I'll go to you, Fish, first. You just hopped in here. What do you think about Texas Vanderbilt?
I'm watching the fourth quarter right now. Dude,
I always guess
it's
the game
awesome.
You're watching.
Like I loved it, man. Like it was great. Like Vandy, I think, is more for real than Texas isn't. Like I think so. I think that Diego Pavia better be a Heisman candidate. He needs to be a Heisman candidate. Maybe his numbers aren't going to be as gaudy or as outstanding.
But he's got a motor, man, and he never stops.
But man, he gets the most out of his offense and that team. Like he gets more out of it than anybody they've had in a long, long, long time.
Yeah.
I'm all here for Vandy, and I am glad we don't have to play them this year.
Yeah,
I am. I really am.
I am too.
I agree, man. So obviously, this couple of topics here I thought I would throw out before we get into the meat and potatoes of tonight. But we're starting this game. One of the big things that's going to be talked about a lot. You got SEC Nation going to be at Georgia, Florida. bear with me, and I'm battling a little bit of a rasp. So, but obviously SEC Nation will be there. A lot of the talk will be, is Florida on one of those, are they in a good spot to take one from Georgia? No Dan Jackson, no Janelle Aguaro, first half from targeting. So, we're going to talk about that dilemma, but let's talk about targeting for a minute. I know you guys are just dying to dive in on this. We'll give you the R-rated version from Richman, and then we'll see what Fishes has with the PG-13 version. But Richman, talk to me about targeting, man. How wild was it that, we come off of this call that is not supposed to be a pass interference call, that's supposed to be something that they can turn over. And next thing we dive back from that when we almost win the game twice. We had to overcome that twice. But then we get into obstacles that try to take the game away from us a third time, but now is almost going to seep into another game for us, which hurts. Talk to me about targeting and how that lined up with, and how that's really going to possibly hurt Georgia for the first half against Florida.
So it's not going to hurt Georgia. It's going to hurt everybody, because you can call targeting on about 75% of tackles. Because when they tackle, if they throw their shoulder in there, there's going to be incidental helmet-to-helmet contact every time. And I don't know if did you hear Pollock's rant?
Uh-huh.
Pollock was 100% dead on. The running backs and the receivers lower their head. When they lower their head and show that crown, and they're not calling for targeting, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's going against the defenses, but these umpires, referees can be subjective, and they can affect any game they want to, anytime they want to, because they can call that about 75% of the time. It's ridiculous.
He's trying to try.
Yeah. Before I say that, Fish, what do you think about targeting? What do you think? I mean, it's so subjective right now. It's hard. I don't think it's hard at all, but I think we make it hard. But what do you think about it?
Yeah, I like the rule a little. I agree it's trying to deter people from going in with their head first and stuff. I get it. But like Richman said, man, there's targeting on 75%. Like, you could call it on 75% of the plays. I mean, you could. Every time a helmet and a helmet hit each other, boom, helmet to helmet. There you go. They could throw a flag if they wanted to.
I mean, if it's that big a deal to them, then take away the helmets. If it's that big a deal, take away the helmets.
I mean, or make
in the head.
Yeah,
or make everybody wear those funny helmet cover things. You know what I mean? They could all wear that. They can make that mandatory. God, I hope they don't, because they're not aesthetically pleasing. But if it's a safety thing they're worried about.
I've never. Are they any heavier on the helmet? I don't know. I haven't personally. I mean, I don't wear a helmet every day, but you guys heard if they look kind of bulky. They look like they have a big bean bag on their head.
They look bulky. I think they'd be I think they would be cumbersome for a running back trying to go through a hole.
Right.
I don't know about anybody else, but
yeah,
the
offensive linemen and the defensive linemen seem to have be the ones who are having issues on down the road, like the players that have come out publicly and said that they're having trauma or anything like that down the road. Well, mainly linemen or linebackers, people that go in hard with their head.
The trenches are where it's happening for sure. Historically, yeah.
They talked to I think it was, I forget what podcast it was, where the guy was talking about how he was able to speak with the head SEC official for the entire SEC, and he kind of talked about, he didn't go into depth about the Georgia and Texas game. He was trying to be very, very.
He's trying to be diplomatic,
but not pick that game out of everything, but be more overall blimp view of the SEC and targeting. But what he mentioned that I thought was an absolute giveaway to think they don't have a grasp on this, and this will be a huge possible topic at SEC meetings, is he said the difference in the fact of why the lowering the head of a defensive player is because and it's more apt to get that call, is because It doesn't have to be just a helmet. If they lower their head towards anything, pads, anything, and it's because the defensive player has intent. And then the question was, well, are you saying that the offensive player can't have intent? And he said no. And that's, to me,
I don't buy
that's
that
totally
at all.
untrue, right?
I don't buy that at all.
Yeah, that's totally
That's
untrue. I mean,
poppycock.
to me, if you look at these running backs, and a lot of these running backs, in the SEC and everywhere, all across the nation, they have something to prove, right? They get the ball in their hands. What's the one thing they want to do? They want to be on a reel where they hit somebody and run somebody over. So you're starting to see towards the end of plays, you're starting to see these running backs lower their head or lower their shoulder and try to just what? Try to end up on the other side of that hit and be standing. So
I'll tell you here's what's going to be interesting is when some defensive coach takes an interest in this and analyzes it, and they start sticking a face mask into knees again. And then careers are over. Because it looks like if you stick a face mask in there, they may not call targeting. So
right.
You put a face mask on something instead of the crown, that's just as dangerous. It's just as hard hitting. And I'm also interested to see when with linebackers, when what we used to call a form tackle, if a linebacker comes in and hits them with the face mask but not the crown of the helmet, are they still going to call targeting if they don't leave their feet? I haven't seen a tackle like that in forever, but I want to see one, and I want to see what happens.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
I'd like to see us get back to tackling like that. And I don't know. This here's another thing about targeting. I don't have as big a problem with targeting if they would get rid of throwing them out of the game next week. Because these players are trying to get they're trying to get a portfolio of game time so they can go to the next level. And if you're kicking them out for the half of the next game, I mean, they only get 12 games, a lot of them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, this is huge for Georgia. I mean, you got Dan Jackson, who's been absolutely phenomenal this year on the backside of that defense.
Dude, we were targeted, and I don't mean that we were targeted by somebody. I've never seen 2 targeting calls in one game. Doesn't happen.
Against a very vital part of the defense, right? Against a young secondary who played well against Texas, who really arrived, in my opinion, against Texas. I think game plan was phenomenal. I think we played the game plan very well. I think that, man, you look at Dan Jackson, you look at Janelle Guaro. I mean, you look at that, man, and it really paints a picture where, KJ Bolden and Jacory, they have to come up really big, and they're going to have to play a lot of downs in the first half. I mean, it wouldn't put it past me if Kirby and them didn't try to drag those 2 quarters out a little bit and just make sure that we were good. I don't want to say that, and I think we keep the same game plan that we've done in the past few weeks. But anyways, I mean, I just when they explain that about the intent thing, it's just like, we might need to revisit that, because intent is, you're just telling me that because they're a defensive player, there's more intent than an offensive player. You can't tell me that every offensive player is literally trying to give up on every play when they're tackled.
They don't. Sometimes they get stripped because they won't give up.
Yeah. I totally agree, man.
I look at that sometimes and I'm like, dude, you need to just go to the ground, and then they'll lose the ball. And so, no, these guys are race horses. They're high strung. They're trying to get every inch they can get, and the defensive players are trying to stop them. That's what makes football football.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, man. But we're gonna, we're definitely gonna take the brunt into that one. I mean, it's going to be a little bit difficult, but I'm sure this week has been a week where, as we prepare, I'm sure that those 2 guys, as well as other guys, have taken a lot of snaps in those areas to make sure they're prepared and ready to go. 2 big stories also on the other front lines of Georgia, Florida. Obviously, this is the return for Trevor Etienne, old team. They're going to have some bulletin board material out there. Obviously, Trevor had a lot to say about Florida, but I don't think it was in a way that discredited Florida. They just asked him some questions during during fall practice. And of course he said, he said here at Georgia, he said, I think we have something that we didn't have there. I think he was speaking to the team camaraderie, the coaching staff and things of that nature. But, a lot of bulletin board material for Florida on this one. They kind of get to play the role Georgia did last week against Texas. They're the underdog. They've been talking a lot about, what's going on with Carson, and we've talked about Carson a lot from week to week, right? And so does Carson look like the guy, last year where his completion percentage is way up? He looks very accurate. I think this year Carson obviously doesn't look as good on tape. He's got some interceptions, but we all have to agree he's done what it needed to be done when the time needed to be, when the time had to be maximized on. He's done that, but I think those are the two big storylines. Richman, what do you think is the bigger storyline though? Like, obviously Florida comes in. If you look at the matchup that you really want to have happen when we preview here in a second, we want that matchup to be Georgia's wide receivers against Florida's secondary, because Florida does play pretty well against the run. Their linebackers make a lot of their tackles. The defensive line has a lot of really good, elusive edge rushers. So, a tribute to that, to a lot of their defensive staff there, and how I think that's been a little bit different this year. Florida's defense is a little bit better than it was last year, but the secondary is still the question mark on the table. But what's the bigger storyline in the Georgia-Florida game? Is it ETN's return, or is it Carson's inconsistency?
That's a good question. I think I don't know, but here's what I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see Kirby's going to try to establish the run. He's not going to go vertical unless Lagway gets real successful and forces us to go vertical. I think you're going to see more swing passes, stand-ups, an extension of the run, and you're going to see us pound it. And obviously, if they shut that down, then we're going to have to go to the air. But I think a lot of what we're going to see is going to be dictated by how well we can contain Lagway. Because, he's thrown more 40-yard passes than any quarterback in the last 20 years at Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a scary proposition that we're looking at on that deep ball.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I don't know why we would ever need to go away from the scheme we used against Texas. What we did for the Texas plan was not really a Texas plan. I think it's something that, as we've gone throughout game to game this year, I just don't think we have the secondary to. We don't have, I don't want to discredit our secondary. I think they're playing at a high level the last few weeks, as compared to the beginning of the year, where you were just like, what's going on in some areas, right? It was a corner getting burnt every time you turned around. But I think you need to look at it and go, what's our strengths and what's our weaknesses? We have a very fast group. What makes us have to look at freshmen, and when they become freshmen, what happens? Well, when you play a lot of cover zero, or a lot of, you're bouncing in and out of sets, and basically all you have sometimes is a one high safety, and you never know where that's coming from. I think what happens is you're making these young players play perfect. And when they don't play perfect, I don't mind giving up a 30-yard pass to DJ Lagway if that's all he gets. But
Right.
what has happened to us in the past, and I think what we're seeing now with Van Buren and Mississippi State, when people go back and look at that game, you look at that game and you go, man, Mississippi State, they've played some good football the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I think Van Buren will be a quarterback you're going to hear from a lot. And that offense that is starting to churn a little bit, is starting to get their feet up under them. Yeah, they had a pretty bad loss. I don't think they could keep it going, for 4 or 5 games straight. But what you've seen is a lot of these teams that have beat Mississippi State 30 points. They don't allow the big play. So I personally think you don't change anything. You make Lagway beat us like you tried to make Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning beat us. And if he's successful,
he's a freshman quarterback. So disguising those the pass protections and the pass defense, and I think that we would probably benefit from doing some zone pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm afraid if we leave those guys out on an island like they like to do, that plays into Lagway's strengths.
Yeah, I agree. I agree because you're going to give him a couple of windows, right? I think if you got to make him play chess.
I don't think Florida's going to drive the ball down the field on us. So if we
Yeah.
can control the big plays,
Yeah.
I think we can, obviously, and if we can control the line of scrimmage. But I think it's going to be a good day.
Yeah. Fish, man, technical difficulties by Fish, so we might see him in and out of the chat maybe, but for the time being, we lost Fish, man, so he is swimming back downstream. But we will go from here with it. Let's get a quick preview in. DJ Lagway, 1,025 yards passing on the year, 5 INTs, 62.8% completion percentage. You know, DJ Lagway is a piece of the puzzle right now that they just want him to continue to get more confident. He's obviously the guy of the future. He's kind of, it's weird because a lot of people go, when is this Lagway's team? Because if the record, it doesn't get to a point where they can either make a bowl or they can do some damage in the SEC and possibly, I don't know, vie for a playoff spot. It really does. Like, when do you look at Graham Mertz and go, hey, it's time for him to pass the baton? Well, it kind of happened organically. I don't know if you'd say injuries organically, but it kind of happened without having to press that button yet, and it did. So Lagway is the guy. Montrell Johnson's been a guy, but there's another name out there at running back that has been really turned it on. And I apologize, I heard it the other day, but I don't have the name written down. I'll have it before we're done. But Montrell Johnson's done a really great job. 70 carries, 373, 4 TDs, but it's still not the running game that Florida thought they would get out of Montrell Johnson either. They thought, this is a redshirt senior. This is a year where he would break out and possibly, really put some big numbers up that they thought. Florida still has a question mark at offensive line in a lot of areas. So I would say for offense, the offensive line is still a question mark. And I would say on defense, the secondary is still a question mark. Players to listen for: Elijah Badger, Shamar Dyke combined for 43 catches, 944 yards on offense. It's very similar to Georgia, and there's not really a lot of stars on that offense over there. There's a lot of good team chemistry happening right now with the offense. They're not doing anything just crazy great, but they're also doing a pretty solid job of making sure that what they're doing is not losing the game for them. I think you look back at the Tennessee game, they were in that game. There's a ton of games you look back, they lost and go, man, where could they have gone a little bit different? And they actually maybe won that game. Defensively, same thing. They have a really great front. They run a lot of people in and out. A number you might see a lot of is 35, Jack Pyburn, player to watch. Tyreek Sapp's got 3.5 sacks coming off the edge. But really, when you look at some of this stuff, and we talk about it, before we get into mailbag, Richman, where do you think the game is won and lost on Saturday with Georgia, Florida? With this, hearing some of the statistics, knowing what Florida's going to bring to Jacksonville and Georgia's bringing to Jacksonville, remembering that we've been teasing it a lot last week where we thought Tate was going to be back. I'm thinking Tate Ratledge is going to be in this game. I'm thinking we finally see Jordan Hall. Golly, I thought we would have seen him like 3 games ago, but they really just tried to get him up to SEC pace. And we were told that we didn't see a healthy Mykel Williams at Texas. So if we're seeing a healthier Mykel Williams at Florida, where do you think this game is won and lost?
Well, I really think it's containing Lagway and not letting him get those big plays, because that's the only way they're going to score on us. To get the ball down the field, they're going to need 30-yard plays. And if we're giving those up, and the other thing is he can run the ball. He's built more like a running back than a quarterback. He's thick, and he doesn't have bird legs, and he runs like he. But another thing too, if you watch him, he gets down on the ground. He doesn't try to run over people. He takes all he can get and he gets downs. So he probably isn't going to get hurt. I would guess that we'll run a spy and try to keep him from busting out the lanes out the front and try to drive him out the side if that's what happens, and keep a spy on him. But I don't know. I really think it's just containing him and not letting he and those receivers get away from us. And the other thing, I mean, they can run the ball too. I think that running back you were talking about was from DeKalb County.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he's a freshman, right? His last name is Bo or Boz or something.
We had a shot at him.
Yeah,
I know but
I think he's pretty good.
We recruited him on the defensive side of the ball. That's why he didn't come to Georgia.
He went both ways. That's right.
Yeah. So I'm looking him up now. Now I'm kind of just wanting to. I had it on the tip of my tongue, and yeah. So let's look at some statistics here. So full team statistics. So his name is drum roll. His name is yeah. So his name is Jaden Bowe.
Bowe. Yeah, I knew it was something like that.
So he's definitely a guy who's broken out, has the most TDs out of any of the running backs.
He's going to be interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, he was recruited on he's out of the Atlanta area, freshman. We recruited him on defense. We wanted him to play defense, and he wanted to play running back, which I totally understand. But you know, I agree with you on the offense. I'm glad you kind of hit the offensive side of it because that allows me to kind of hit the defensive side of it. But I think it's won or loss for us on the defensive end with, you know, or in a nutshell, it's going to be Georgia's passing game versus Florida's secondary. I think I like the defensive front for Florida if they can get some pressure on Carson. I think they've seen what pressure can do to Carson. Can they get him a little rattled? Are they looking at Carson as a little more human this year? And they're not as, I don't know. I mean, you know, Carson came into this game last year and he was a guy that was kind of like, man, what does he do? Well, he just doesn't lose the game for you. He just doesn't do things to lose the game. Whereas this year, you know, he's been a little bit more human. He's thrown some interceptions. He's put us in situations where, you know, maybe we could have lost the game, but he's also put us in situations where we've won the game, you know, i.e. the 11-play drive that came back and won the game for the second time against Texas. So,
yeah, when he gets his back up against the wall, he's been able to focus and be resilient.
Yeah.
It's just,
but it's like playing loose is like, I don't know, man. It's like you feel good about it. You watch him and you're like, where did that one come from? You know, and you get mad for the moment, but you also go back and watch the tape and go, okay, I see what he was doing there. But
yeah, man. I mean, if you were in the know, half of his interceptions are missed assignments and balls that went through their hands and tips, and so
yeah,
take those away, he probably looks better than he does. But there's definitely some issues with his form this year, and we've talked about that before. Maybe some injury of his left shoulder or something that's been nagging him. But he's getting better. So I mean, he seems to be getting better. You know, early in the season, he was throwing some of those balls that he would zip and never miss, and they wouldn't even get there. They'd just sink into the grass, and you're going, that doesn't look like him.
Right.
So I think he's getting, whatever it is, I think it's getting better. Obviously, I mean, his coaches know what's going on with his form. You know, they're working on that week to week, and if it's an injury and he's getting better, his form's getting a little bit better, but you still see, you know, a few things, especially when he throws that ball and goes over to one side. It looks awkward.
Yeah. Well, I continue to hear that this week was a week that was worked on with receivers in the passing game, and I don't want to know what it looked when Kirby zooms in on something like, who knows, man? They're loading up the jugs machine, like shooting it from like here to my computer screen at them at like 100. I don't know, man. Like if I'm a receiver this week, either I'm very scared by that or I'm encouraged by it.
They're all going to come out with red and black gloves.
I guess, man. Everybody wearing gloves. Why are you wearing gloves tonight? Usually don't wear gloves. If you had the week of practice we had, you'd know why. But who knows? But let's hop into a little. We're going to pick these games here in a little bit. But let's hop in. Let's do some mailbag stuff. In the last 3 or 4 weeks, we got a few of these questions that seeped in. If you're not familiar, you can go to dogsdownsouth@gmail.com and share any questions you have. We'll read it on the show. We'll answer it. What I try to do is I pull some mailbag questions that were pretty cool and I thought were really talked about very well.
A couple shout outs I want to do.
Yeah.
Stackhouse 37 consecutive starts.
Big.
This week will be his 37th. That's crazy, huh?
It's big.
Chaz Chambliss, dude, he was like a wolf last week against Texas.
Yeah.
That was the best game I think I've ever seen him play.
Yeah, people hate on Chaz all the time. Man.
They do, but I mean, he showed up big against Texas.
Smart guy.
Jalen Walker, first player in 20 years to get 3 sacks and 7 tackles against an AP number 1 opponent.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy, and it's
big
crazy
stuff.
to see
I mean,
draft stuff.
If our guys show up and keep playing and doing great stuff like that, I think we're going to be fine this week.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something else. You know, Kirby was on a team that lost 3 years in a row to Florida, and then his senior year they won. But he hates Florida. So
I thought about playing that locker room conversation he had at one point in time, but it's a little not PG.
It's a little graphic.
Yeah.
But he's going to have these guys. Look, if he can't get them fired up to play against Florida, don't worry about the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree.
I
think what you got to be scared about is, are we looking ahead? Obviously, the game time announced for Ole Miss. Kiffin was pissed, dude. You know, that was their last chance, I think, to get a night game in the Grove. But 3:30 game in Ole Miss. So I just hope we're not looking ahead to Ole Miss. I don't think we will be. I think, you look at Florida, you look at Ole Miss, you look at Tennessee, then Tech. Really big month coming up in November. Will feel like a night game because obviously the time it changes after that game, so it won't that day.
I know Ole Miss is a bigger game this year, but in my mind, the Georgia-Florida game's always going to be bigger than an Ole Miss game.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't care what the records are.
I have a feeling though that the reason why this is big is because if you lose a game like Georgia-Florida, you start to look at that and go, does everybody look at the Georgia-Florida loss as like a Alabama Vanderbilt type thing? I mean, because Vandy, in my opinion, I don't know about you, but if you put Vandy and Florida on a neutral site right now, like, who are you picking?
That'd be a good fight.
It'd be a good fight, but I think I'm picking Vandy. I'm trusting more out of my eyes that I'm seeing this year with Pavia, the defense, the discipline
more
defense.
Proven, that's for sure. And
yeah,
I think Lagway's he's having success, but I think he's a freshman. I think he's finding his way. Look, 3 years from now, we'd be talking about Lagway.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be like, what do we do to beat this guy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He reminds me of a guy that, we got some mailbag questions on Lagway, but I like Lagway. I said at the beginning of the year, he's definitely the quarterback that, you build the system off of.
I wish he was sitting on our bench.
I do. I do too. Hey, man, you never know. Lane Kiffin might not be the guy that comes in there. I don't want to start that rumor, but one of my rumors already got shot down. I was talking about Gus Malzahn and UCF, and if anything, UCF might just be wanting to get rid of Gus Malzahn. He just fired his defensive coordinator. That's not SEC news, but what it does say is there's trouble in paradise at UCF, and if I think that they gave him a couple other lives if he fired his defensive coordinator and showed some improvement there, but Gus may be looking for another job, and it might not be leaving UCF for Florida. It might be he's available if Florida wants to pick him up. I don't know.
Dude, I think there's trouble everywhere, and I think it's this parity, this NIL, the portal. I think that makes everybody and every fan base and every athletic director, I think it makes them nervous and antsy.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that in a second because that's one of the mailbag questions. But let's hop in. We're going to do about 30 seconds on a question. We're going to get some quick answers so we can try to get through them all. But like I said, these are the questions that came up on other podcasts. A couple of these are from Feinbaum, my man Feinbaum. And then also we did have a few of these that was put in there that I actually kept for the Georgia-Florida week because they were Florida questions. But first one out there is since Steve Spurrier, who has been the biggest challenge for Georgia, I think I would agree with that one of the biggest challenges in Georgia in that rivalry. Who's been the other biggest headache? I would even say, I would say Urban Meyer probably, but let's exclude Meyer. because I think he was a headache too. But who would you think is probably the biggest headache outside of Meyer and Spurrier in this matchup in the past, 5 to 10 years? Who would you think that was?
Jeez, I don't know, man. You think
I
Mullins?
mean, Zook was
Mullins fired.
Zook was pre-Meyer, or
Zook gave us some trouble, and he was. I forgot about him. Yeah, he won against. I don't know how many games he won against us, but I remember pouting quite a few times against him because I just couldn't believe he had a team that beat us.
Yeah, I was trying to think back, and I was like, okay, so Zook came up, Dan Mullen came up, but I think we got the best of Dan Mullen. But I also remember this guy he gave us a little bit of problems. Jim McElwain, he gave Georgia a few problems in his time there. I think it was more swayed towards Urban Meyer and Steve Spurrier, but I would say my guess out of those would be between Zook and McElwain and I mean, I even thought back to the Charlie Strong days, but Charlie Strong didn't do much at Florida. So I would say McElwain. I just remember, McElwain was known a little bit for his offense. But definitely Urban Meyer, Steve Spurrier has been, the predominant ones. Here's the next question. Can Lagway turn into a building block for Florida with or without Napier? Do you think, first off, if Napier goes, do you think Lagway stays at Florida?
That's a good question. I don't know if you can answer that kind of question, but I think if he's starting, I don't know. I mean, the portal opens up. People promise you money in starting positions. So
right, he'll be a top commodity in the SEC. I mean,
look, everybody's looking for the bigger, better deal. If the coach leaves and somebody has a decent line and decent receivers, and they're going to let you sling it, they're going to think about it.
This will be the first big year. I think, you always, the second and third year is when you really see what something can do. And I think this coming up year will be the year where everybody looks at NIL and goes, what have we done to the system? Because you might not see some of these teams in near the, I mean, especially with a 12-team playoff. I mean, the 12-team playoff was supposed to be the big change this year, but really the fact that Will Howard's going to be playing for Ohio State this year when he was just playing for Kansas State. And you look at some of these, I look at some of these teams, man, I'm just like,
well, here's an interesting question on what you're just saying. And is it possible that it makes more sense to keep Napier because this team is evolving and they're playing their hearts out for him? They're giving everything they got. I mean, they're coalescing. Is it possible that they come to the conclusion that it's better to keep him than let him go and all of a sudden lose all this talent we've got? Because that's something that happens.
If I'm Billy Napier, I'm going to tell you what I would do. Okay. I would do what Pittman did at Arkansas to get himself one more year and to maybe just kind of strengthen his argument to, the naysayers at Florida, maybe the guys who are on the fence, the collective. I would look and go, look, I'm still a young guy. Obviously, I've done some good things here at Florida. He's a good recruiter. He's shown that. I mean, he's had some rough years. To be able to keep some of the talent that he has and to grab some of the talent, like you'll see Kamani McLean, you'll see Lagway, you'll see a lot of, to keep Montreal Jackson, you'll see a lot of talent out there on Saturday that Florida easily could have lost. So he's a good recruiter. He's a likable guy. Although we've said before, we're not paying people to be a great mentor. We're paying people to win football games, right? And be a great mentor. It's a package deal. I think if he goes out there and can snag a guy, big time coordinator on offense, defense, that they maybe can look and go, I tell you what, I'll get you this guy. He's going to help the team. He's going to help us really get where we need to go because, the gaps that Napier has, he can be a mentor in that area. And then if Napier doesn't pan out, well, I'm giving you a really good way to go. If you're done with me in 4 games, look who you have, because that's what was going to happen with Pittman. That was the plan with Petrino was, hey, if we get rid of Pittman game 4, Petrino can coach this team for 6 or 7 games.
That's a good strategy. I like it.
I don't know who it would be. I mean, I can look at a couple names. I mean, you look at Chip Kelly, he's sitting on Ohio State's roster as an OC. some guys just don't really, I mean, you just don't. You never know who you could see. You could see a Dave Aranda out there because I don't think he's going to make it through this year at Baylor. I mean, Clark, I don't know this. I mean, I think this year kind of guarantees another year for Beamer at South Carolina. I think he'll be okay. I mean, I don't know. Mark Stoops, is Mark Stoops looking for a defensive coordinator position? Does he end up at Florida? I don't know. I mean, if Napier can run the offense, I mean, Stoops has never been down for his defense at Kentucky, in my opinion. I mean, he probably could have shown better on defense, but defense has not been the problem at Kentucky. It's been the lack of offense at Kentucky. So is Stoops looking for a job? I mean, I don't know, is somebody out there going, I really want to be coaching right now, and I may be retired too early? Like, can you nab a big name and go, look, this could save Billy Napier, but also if this doesn't happen, you don't have to worry about the assistant being the special teams coordinator because he has great character and he's not going to do something stupid. He can't coach the football team, but he's not going to do anything stupid for 7 months and lose recruits, or seven weeks and lose recruits. I don't know. It's worth talking about, but I don't think really right now. I still don't know if Napier's job is still being questioned at 4-3, and depending on what he does here, I think they expect him to lose against Florida, but also there's some games out there they still expect him to win. I mean, you got to look and go Florida State. That's kind of a win this year. You think, the way Florida State's looking, So does, if Florida can grab 2 more wins, they're bowl eligible. So maybe this is not still something that they're looking at. And we can pull Florida's schedule. Let me see if I can pull this real quick. I don't want to get too far into it.
I think they're going to beat the crap out of FSU.
Yeah, I agree. I think FSU's a win. Let's pull this up real quick. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So Florida has, they got Georgia. They got a tough one here. They got Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. So my thing is they get LSU in Gainesville, they get Ole Miss in Gainesville, and they get Florida State in Tallahassee. They get 3 games in the swamp that could be make or breaks. I don't know. I mean, if I'm guessing Georgia and Texas are not wins. So I don't know, man. I mean, LSU looked very vulnerable. They're just trying to give the game away. I mean, geez, I don't know how they lose that game this past weekend, but they did. You got Ole Miss. I don't really know. I mean, Ole Miss has been proven to try to make some of these games a little bit closer. I don't really know.
Ole Miss dropped to Kentucky, so
yeah, it's a lot to dive into. So I don't know. I mean, I know there's 2 games and he's bowl eligible. I mean, nobody thought that this year. So that might be his playing card. But here's another one. So Lane Kiffin, is this real? Do you think Lane Kiffin to Florida is a real narrative, or you think this is just something that just got summed up, just got driven up somewhere? Would Kiffin be interested in this job?
I think he would. I really do. I think it's easier to get talent to Florida. I think there's more money there to work with.
Mm-hmm.
It's a higher profile job, and he may be sitting there thinking, I've taken this as far as I can go out here in Mississippi.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you, you may see Florida become a contender, but what you've really done is you're probably not going to see Ole Miss contend anymore. I think Kiffin has been a main reason why Ole Miss has been a contender on the past 4 or 5 years. And even though he's tried to keep up with the likes of Alabama and Georgia, and he bought a lot of talent this year, I don't know. And
he's using the portal heavily.
Yeah, $20 million, man. He's another guy that spent $20 million on players. And, he's sitting here and he's still on the outside looking in, regardless of if he wins all his games. If he wins every game on the thing, there's a possibility he's on the outside looking in. So I don't know how real it is, but I do know that if Florida's going to be looking for a coach, there's not too many names on this list that are going to be more attractive than Lane Kiffin. And my thing is I don't know if Florida can afford to miss again. I mean, if they miss again, did I say this with Napier?
Dude,
I said this with Napier.
They've been missing for years, except for Spurrier and Meyer.
Yeah. They can't afford to miss again because Florida has a chance. I mean, they've been hanging by a thread to be relevant, the past 3 to 4 years. But if they miss this time, man, does Florida become? I mean, do they become the Mississippi States of the SEC? This is deja vu. I think I talked about this at some point in time, but for time's sake, moving on. I don't know, man. I think Lane Kiffin is a serious name for Florida.
I do
Why
too.
wouldn't it be? Why would it not
Why
be? I
wouldn't
mean,
it?
I'll tell you this much: if God forbid somebody was like, hey, like Kirby Smart, any whatever name in a sentence, NFL, whatever he needed to do. You may think I sound like crazy right now, but Kiffin's my first name on the block, man. Like I think Kiffin can put a team together. I think he can coach. I think he'll have a great offense, and I think he's just missing. Those pieces are a namesake, like Georgia. Ole Miss, maybe not that namesake. It's not that big, candidate for names on the list to say, hey, Georgia, and then you put everything behind them.
Well, okay, let me throw one horseshoe out there or a boomerang. What about the Indiana coach? Is his name Signelli or Signetti?
Yeah,
Dude,
he's
he
an Alabama
something
guy.
like that to Florida.
It's a good. That'd be good.
I mean, he was successful before, and he's got these guys playing like way over their heads. I mean, he's coaching.
A lot of people said that the chip on his shoulder this year is from the fact that he was kind of pissed he got overlooked. I don't even know if he got an interview for the Alabama job. I mean, he's a Saban guy. He coached with Saban at Alabama. Do you know that?
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, then
He's a Saban guy.
Then that should be somebody that, I mean, if Florida's out there, if they're making a list and checking it twice, like Santa Claus, they better put his name on the list.
They better come with a pocketbook. That's all I'm saying. They got to have a pocketbook.
Dude, they got orange juice money. What are you talking
about? Yeah. I don't think that Texas money though. I mean, what Sarkisian would leave Texas. We don't want to talk. Well, that's great offseason banter, but I mean, there was banter about Kiffin's. Some places. I mean, we talked about Kiffin, Alabama, before DeBoer got the pick there. But two more questions before we pick these games. Hottest seat now in the SEC. What's your 3, 2, 1? So who's the third hottest, second hottest, first hottest? Who do you think?
Oh, my 3 is DeBoer.
Wow.
I think not that they're going to let him go, but his seat's hot right now.
Yeah.
I mean, those people over there are not happy.
Yeah.
My number 2 is Kelly.
Okay.
Because I personally don't like him, but I mean, he's just not. He came down here to dominate, and he convinced somebody he was going to do that, and he's not dominating.
Mm-hmm.
But and my number 1's still Napier, and that's just because.
Yeah. All right. Those are some interesting names at 3. I like DeBoer. For 3, I kind of like him more like a 5. Like he got a little microwave.
Yeah, I mean, you could throw what's his name at Kentucky in there at 3.
Yeah, he's my 1, buddy. Mark Stoops is number 1 on my list.
Stoops is number 1. Mm.
Yeah, I think Stoops is number 1. I think you don't see Stoops next year at Kentucky. I think it's signed, sealed, delivered. No, I think it's signed, sealed, delivered. I think DeBoer. So here's the thing with DeBoer. I think Nick Saban had a really genius thing to say that if DeBoer would take that free advice, that's some counseling money, right? Copay, nothing. Take Saban's advice. Don't think about winning football games right now. You got to get Alabama back to playing with a standard. Like, get them back to playing with an Alabama standard. What is their standards? This is who we are. This is what we're going to take and not take. This is who we're going to be in tough times. This is who we're going to be in good times. There's a standard there. Ryan Williams would not be celebrating like he's a child, and he is a child, but he would not be celebrating all these antics that were happening if Nick Saban was that coach. And a lot of people say, well, it's because Nick Saban is, no, it's because there's a standard. There would be players there that would be locking him in very quickly, right? And Saban would be the first guy to look at you and go, hey, man, we want you here, but we don't need you here. right? So at the end of the day, like there's a standard there. The Malachi Moore thing where he's kicking the football. That guy's not seeing the field, bro, for a couple of games. I mean, Jalen Milroe was on the bench against USF last year because the fact that Saban didn't feel like he was leading up to what an Alabama quarterback should be leading, the potential of leadership that it should be coming from an Alabama quarterback, it wasn't happening. That was not off of bad ill will. The quarterback was not performing. That was off of, I have a feeling like you're not leading this team the right way. But yet we got people kicking footballs and it's okay. I don't want to dive too far into it, but I agree with you. If they don't start playing to an Alabama standard, nobody's going to fire you for wins and losses. You're going to just, it's going to be a hard pass. It's going to be like, hey, man, we tried it, but it didn't work because they're not going to let this program go down, man. It's been up. It's been up. And the collective and the fans and the University of Alabama will not allow the football program after what they had with Nick Saban to ever go into even close of shambles.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting pick. My 3 on this list continues to be Pittman. I think he had some highs and lows this year, but out of these 3, he's the safest out of the 3. But I think that he had a couple games that I'm just like, dang, like, what happened, right? This past week, like what happened? Just not finishing games. Offense looking great. Defense looking like, okay, what's going on? Just can't get that complete game going. And I think what that does as a head coach, it kind of exposes him to going like, like we just said, like what's the standard at Arkansas? I mean, we have some their offense looks incredible, man. Their offense is averaging over 500 and something yards a game in total offense. That's incredible. But the defense and the total team play, the team camaraderie is just not there. So I think Pittman is at 3. I think number 2 is Billy Napier for me. I think still he's got a gauntlet of games coming up. I mean, he's got Georgia, he's got Texas, he's got Ole Miss, he's got LSU, he's got Florida State. I think there could be 4 losses in there, and maybe he beats Florida State. You don't want to be the guy that at the end of the year gives Norvell like a little silver lining in the clouds when
that would be his demise.
No, yeah. If you give Mike Norvell something to chew on and them to go, oh, okay, well, it's not that bad. Maybe we just were off this year, because that would also give him his 8th loss, so he would end the season at 4-8. That's a firing for me. He's gone if he makes it to there. The gauntlet for him is going to be Georgia, Texas, LSU.
Yeah, I think the only way he can stay is he's going to have to play extremely tough against these 3 opponents and beat FSU.
Yeah, I agree. FSU is a given. He can't lose to LSU. And then Mark Stoops is all but gone to me. I don't know when it will happen. I know that, Liam Cohen is an offensive coordinator he's at the Bucs right now, and he's running an offense that just looks incredible. For the Bucs, I mean, the Bucs have had, I want to go into NFL right now. They've had a ton of injuries. I mean, obviously 2 big receivers go down, and they still almost beat the Falcons this past week. And my thing is, Liam Cohen is not the problem at Kentucky. Matter of fact, they butted heads a lot. And as you're seeing right now, maybe Cohen was right. But now you got Mark Stoops grasping at straws, and he has an offense that can't do anything. And now the defense is not holding up some of their ends of the bargain too. He has a really great defense on paper. A lot of potential NFL talent on that defense. I think it's only a matter of time before. I mean, his buyout's incredible. I think his buyout's around $34 million, but Kentucky's fine. They haven't had to pour that much money out in football in a long time, so the basketball team will cover that. No big deal. I think he's my number 1 hot seat. Last thing before we pick tonight, what do you think? Just give me the one answer in the entire college football. What do you think the next big coaching change is in college football?
Lincoln
Who's
Riley.
the guy?
Lincoln
Riley?
I think.
Wow. Yeah.
I think USC. I think he's on the hot seat, and I think that could be a big one.
Interesting. I didn't have a really solid answer on this one, but I will tell you, I will give you my conspiracy theory and something to talk about depending on how a couple of these next few games go. But
I know what you're going to say.
Ryan Day at Ohio State is beginning to become a guy to go, hey, buddy, how much talent do you actually need
to win the big one?
To win the Big Ten, bro, or win the big one. Just like you have a, I mean, if you had told me Quinshawn Junkins, Caleb Downs, Will Howard, whoever the quarterback from Alabama was, the big true freshman, Julian Sayin, I mean, good Lord, the talent that has come to that team and fallen in his lap. And he is playing close games against teams he should be blowing out. I mean, he's great against the teams he should win against, and he doesn't win the big games, right? Another big game for him this week. We'll talk more about Ryan Day in a minute, but he's my coach, and I'm like, so between him and Lincoln Riley, they're definitely duking it out. But you know, I just got to think that it's never going to be a bad record that's going to get Ryan Day out of there, because Ohio State is not going to let that happen. They're not going to let a terrible record get them. You know, it's going to be not winning the big one.
Like this week's a must win for him.
100%. And don't play Michigan close. This is the year that you don't. This is the year you beat Michigan, but I don't even know if you have the leniency to play Michigan close this year. Not when Michigan has barely beaten Michigan State and they're duking it out about it. I mean, that's just crazy, man. Crazy. A couple games we can talk about as we pick them, but let's hop in. Let's pick them. We'll start in the SEC this week. Not a huge SEC slate, but I'll tell you one that is big on the radar for me. It's a noon game. It's in Arkansas. Arkansas 5-3 against Ole Miss. It's going to be a noon kickoff game. This is a trap. Ole Miss, are they looking ahead for Georgia? It's a trap game. Only 7 points right now. Vegas has the spread. ESPN and Vegas have the spread at 7 points for Ole Miss. Who you got in this one?
That's a good one, man. Whew.
Right out of the barn burner, man.
I'll go with the underdog, man. I'll take the Hogs.
Whew, the Hogs, man. If they get their act together on defense, I mean, yeah, man. Like I can totally see that happening.
Well, they're a physical team, and I'm just not sure Ole Miss ultimately is going to be that physical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. It's in Arkansas, man.
Yeah,
it's upset city.
They got to listen. Yeah, they got to listen to the pig call. Sweet.
It's upset city, man. I mean, it could be. It's a noon game. Are they looking ahead? This is a game that right now that you don't, as Lane Kiffin, you don't want to overcook the hog before you get to Georgia. I mean, he had a lot to say in his presser about the fans deserve a night game against Georgia. There was a lot of chatter about Georgia that Kirby steers way east of, if that ever comes up, and Kiffin seems to like to dive into that. But
yeah, and I hate to get back to this, but like if I was making a list and checking it twice, I'd put a circle around Kiffin, because I'm gonna go out there and say he went to Alabama to work on some of his maturity issues.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of wondering if maybe there's still some issues with that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I like Lane Kiffin, man.
For the big game.
I'm concerned that Lane is, I don't know, man.
Like not serious enough. Like Kirby and Saban are so serious.
Yeah.
And like me, I wouldn't be a good head coach because I'm not that serious.
Right.
Like, those guys are just locked in, and nothing else matters. They can crack a joke,
right?
But it almost hurts them to laugh.
Yeah. No, definitely, man. I don't know. I'm gonna pick Ole Miss in this one. It's gonna be a whirlwind of a game. I think it could bounce back and forth. It might even be that Arkansas is scaring everybody at first, and they're ahead at the half. But I mean, I think Ole Miss wins it, but I think it's going to become the fact of, I mean, it's never been the offense, it's been the defense. And for me, for Ole Miss, it's been the question mark of the offense this year. When the offense played teams that had zero team goals in the year and was just happy to win a few games. And they beat them by 60 points when they actually played some competition. The offense has struggled at times this year. The defense has been something that's been really good, but I felt like the defense looked a little bit inconsistent this past week in their game.
You just said something interesting too. It's like everybody, when they have to play some competition, has kind of been jarred. And when then you look at coaches and you look at a coach like Saban or like Kirby. Kirby's one of these guys. He's got that eye of the tiger, that killer instinct to finish, to follow through, and win in these games like that, except for Alabama. But
yeah.
But some of these teams, when they get to the competition, they just don't seem to have that follow through.
Right. Yeah. I hear you, man.
They don't have that iron chin, It's more glass.
Yeah. I hear you. And for me, that's been what is that for Kiffin?
And that's coaching. That's psychology and coaching. It's mental. It's something. It's an abstract. We don't know what it is, but that's what makes this game so interesting.
Yeah. Somebody asked me the other day, and I'll be honest with you, because I said it earlier, but I don't want it to be misconstrued. A lot of people would be like, so you're telling me that if you had to, if Georgia was the number one job open and you had your pick of the litter, who you would have come, to Georgia to be the coach. So you're saying it's Lane Kiffin? No, I'm saying that I would be happy to take Kiffin if that was an option, because we all know it's who's available, regardless of if we can go pluck who we want to. But I would say the number one person I would want to bring to Georgia right now, 100%, like give me Dan Lanning right now, because I think he would give the best balance. He would. I mean, you look at what Oregon's doing. You give him the I call it the creed of what goes on at Georgia with offense and defense. You put him involved in that, and man, I want Kirby 110%. But if you got to give me somebody else right now, Dan Lanning is a character guy, and he is one that I would say, if I'm looking at any other game on the rest of our slate right now that I just really, really worry about, is if we ever come across Oregon this year. I think they're a good team. I think they're balanced, have a great coach. They'll have a great game plan. They're scary on paper. They started out rough, but they're scary on paper. Texas A&M at South Carolina. This one jumps off the paper at me, just because South Carolina's defense has played so well this year. Texas A&M is doing exactly what I thought they would do this year, even probably on steroids. I like what we've seen from Texas A&M. We texted about Texas A&M against an LSU game. I like Texas A&M in this game, but I will say that there's a reason why Texas A&M is only coming in at about a 2.5 point favorite in this game. Who do you have in this game?
I got A&M.
Yeah, I like A&M a lot in this game, just because of the fact I don't know if South Carolina can score enough with them, and the fact that the big thing will be South Carolina's front four against that running attack of Texas A&M. Texas A&M is averaging the most yards on the ground per carry in the SEC. That will be the question. If they can impose that will on South Carolina, this is a runaway. But if they can't, I'm interested and curious to see what Texas A&M goes to, because that'll give you a little bit of a showing of what are they going to be if they get in the playoff. Because I do think South Carolina has a defense that's playoff worthy. I don't think they have the complete package, but I love South Carolina's defense this year. So I got Texas A&M too. Tennessee, 7:45 against Kentucky at Neyland, 6-1. Tennessee's a 16.5 point favorite. Who you got in this one, Richmond?
I'll take Tennessee, but I don't think you think they go 16.5 over? I don't think so.
I think Tennessee finally gets the opportunity to play a complete game, maybe. The defense is really good. Tennessee's defense is really good. I think the score is bigger than you think because of the fact that Kentucky's not going to be able to score a lot of points. Tennessee has one of the top defenses in the SEC. It's going to look lopsided. I don't think it's going to be because Tennessee puts up a lot of points. I think it's going to be because Kentucky can't put up points. So you might see one of those 33-10 type things, or it's going to look lopsided. But if you had a team that could score a little bit, yeah, it might end up to be like, 30-24, 31-27. It might be, but Kentucky's not going to be able to score against Tennessee at Neyland. Hostile environment. You obviously saw they didn't perform well against Florida in the Swamp. How are you going to do it against Neyland? We all know they're pumping noise in with that 101,000 people at Neyland. So give me that one very easy. Let's hop into this one right here. Number 1, Oregon goes down to Michigan. This is a 3:30 game. Oregon's at 14.5. One of the biggest Oregon spreads against Michigan in 27 years. I think I read it. 27 years that they've played each other. Oregon 14.5. Who you got in this game?
Oregon, and they cover, man.
Yeah, Oregon covers. Michigan can't find a quarterback right now, man, and they got quarterbacks retiring quicker than they can call it, man. It's wild. Louisville 7:30 game on ESPN, heading down to Dabboville. Man, Clemson is a hot team, man. They lost the first one, and you thought after that first game that Dabo was just like, all right, the sky's falling in Clemson, and they asked him a ton of questions like, hey, you can't score points, you can't do this. It tells the tape to what they were going against, because obviously you see now what a healthy Georgia defense can do to a team first game of the year. But Clemson's a hot team, averaging over 500 yards a game since Georgia in total offense. They got Louisville. They got Clemson at 10.5 in this game. I would say if I look back 2 weeks ago, this game would be a little bit tighter to me. But I've seen Louisville play some close games, and it just looks like they're missing that edge a little bit. I got Clemson in this one, and I got Clemson kind of big in this one. I think they score. I think they cover very easily. I think this is one of the games that people are looking at Dabo to go, hey, tell everybody in the ACC you're not only the person in the ACC, but you're the big dog in the ACC. Who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I got Clemson, and I agree. I think they're going to cover easily.
Yeah. Last 2 games. So I got 3 games. So I got Duke heading into Miami 8-0. I think, we're still looking at Miami going, is this a complete team? They're in the ACC. Are they worthy of the playoff? They're ranked as high as 5 right now.
What's Duke's record?
Duke is 6-2 right now. So this is a compelling game. But they're giving Miami 21.5 points at home.
Wow.
Who do you got in this game?
Yeah, I'll take Miami, but they're not covering. I don't guess.
Yeah, I mean, you look back last week, and Duke is a 2-point conversion away from winning that game. If he just runs it into the end zone instead of throws it, they win that game. They come all the way back and they win that game. I don't think Miami covers, but if there's a team that's going to actually maybe challenge them a little bit differently, I think they still have some Mike Elko-isms in them. I mean, obviously Manny Diaz. I like Manny. They're going to have a feisty defense. Manny knows Miami because Manny coached at Miami. So
right.
I don't know how those two things will come together. I think it'll be closer because of that. But I don't think Duke wins. But my thing is, and I'd love to pull Miami's schedule. I know we're a little over tonight, but I wanted to do this because, you look at Miami's rest of their schedule, and you got to wonder, is Miami a lock? Is Miami and Clemson, they're basically on they're storming ahead for a landing spot in that title game, but
they're on a collision course.
Yeah, they got Duke at home, then they go to Georgia Tech, at home against Wake, and then at Syracuse. I don't see any other game besides this Duke game that's going to give them a huge problem. Maybe a little bit of Syracuse, but when you look at those two factors, you kind of give the nod and go, this is kind of the hump Miami has to get over. And I think that they're in. I think they're definitely in the playoff. But I wonder, are they firmly grasped in the ACC championship? And I think it's going to be against Clemson. And if you give me a neutral side, I think Clemson. I got to put Dabo in that spot right there. But who do you have for that game? Curiosity.
I got Miami for sure.
Yeah, I think Miami wins.
I
don't know about by 21.5.
I don't think they could do 21.5 though.
Yeah. Last 2 games, big one. College game day I'm hearing college game day is not being shot down or let down by big noon kickoff. They're both going to be there, riding the wave out. This is a big, huge game in the Big Ten. Ohio State goes down to, maybe up to Penn State. sideways, up. I don't know my geography.
Happy-
But 7-0
happy
Penn State. Yeah. Number 4 Ohio State 6-1. This is at Beaver Stadium. One of the biggest crowds. I think you're gonna. I don't know if you're gonna see a whiteout as effective because it's a noon kickoff game. But right now, Ohio State's 3.5. Who do you got in this game?
Man, I'm going to go with Penn.
Yeah.
I want to see Penn lose, but I really think they're going to beat Ohio.
Yeah. The only quarterback.
And the only reason I think they're going to beat Ohio is because I think Ohio is under a tremendous amount of pressure, and I don't think that's good for Ryan Day.
Yeah. Big games
he
for
just
him,
doesn't
right?
perform under pressure, or his teams don't.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you what, I'm going to pick Ohio State in this one. I'll tell you a reason why. I've said this before. I think if Ohio State loses this game, there are problems. There are problems in Buckeyeville. There are a lot of problems. Drew, I forget the name of the thing, is Algar or whatever is the quarterback is a game time decision. That'll also depend on how successful they are that day. I'm going to go Ohio State. This is going to be a close game, noon kickoff. I think Ohio State, like Georgia, this could be a Texas game for Ohio State. You know, a bounce back game. It's either a make or break for them. I mean, I feel like it's kind of a Texas game for them, right?
I agree.
So I think they got to win. Their heels are on the back. I'm curious to see.
I mean, this game makes or breaks their season, kind of.
Yeah, curious to see who they pick for this game. But I'll take Ohio State because I think they got to win, and I think Day has to win this game because it might be his Michigan this year. You know, you don't. Yeah, you can look at Michigan and go, they're Michigan, but I think it's his Michigan. There's not any other games on his slate besides maybe Indiana. I can look at Ohio State's schedule real quick, but I don't know if there's any other games on their schedule. I think they do play. Yeah, they got Indiana. They got a gauntlet, man. They got a little bit of a gauntlet coming. They got Penn State. Yeah, I think Purdue's a win, Northwestern's a win, but then they got Indiana at home, and then they got Michigan at home. So a little bit of a gauntlet. This is a must win for Ohio State and their playoff chances because I do think Indiana out of the Big Ten is playing at a high level. I do think that obviously Oregon is playing at a high level, but I think after that they're the third team out of the Big Ten to get in.
So if Ohio State runs the table, goes into the playoffs, and then they lose first round, you think Ryan Day's done?
No, they're in the playoffs, so he's fine.
No, I said in the playoffs, and then they lose the first round.
Oh, first round loss. I think it could be very well speculated that yes, because I think that's going to put them on the road the first round. I think it can guarantee them a very, very tough game. They may be playing a 5, 6, or 7 seed. At that point, it could be whoever the ACC loss is. Let's just say Georgia wins the SEC and Texas is your 5th, and then let's say Miami. The loser of Miami Clemson is at 6, and maybe I don't know who you have at 7. Maybe a Tennessee at 7. So you're looking at Ohio State playing a Tennessee, a Miami, or a Texas team, and that might not bode well for Ryan Day.
Dude, this playoff's going to be just crazy.
It's gonna be wild, man.
Because we've never seen this many good teams paired up ever.
Yeah, it's gonna be wild. And we get those. I mean, we'll talk about it next week. We get those first results, obviously, on November 5th. So this will be the last game that we'll be looking at the AP polls. We will actually get a playoff poll on November 5th. So the time change will be on the 3rd, and we'll get a playoff poll on the 5th. Obviously, a lot of things on here. Things I look at here is Georgia can't look past, obviously. I think this team is going to be looking for they're going to be playing for Napier's job. I think they know that if they beat Georgia, that Napier is, I think he's good. He could win the rest of the games this year. If he beats Georgia, he's fine. And I think, Lagway, I think this is a game that could set itself up in our past, like a South Carolina or a Vanderbilt, or say it could look that way for us. I don't think we'll overlook this game, but I do think this game, I mean, with Georgia only there to 16.5-point favorite, You may see it get a little bit better. I think maybe like 14.5 by the time the game hits. But who you got in this one? And
I
what's
got
the score?
28-13 Dogs.
Low scoring game. Low scoring
Well,
game.
I don't
28-13.
think I don't know. I don't think Kirby's going to put the hammer down like he has done in the past.
Okay.
If he's comfortable, I don't think he's going to like turn the knife.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the defense is doing well, if Florida gets down there and has to kick 2 field goals, and they've only got 1 score, I don't think he puts the accelerator on. I think he ices this game and gets out of there.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I think that is this is something else. I think if we're comfortably in control of this game, I don't know that he's going to pound them with ETN. I think he's going to get ETN out.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're going to need him so much more next week and down the stretch that he's going to use his other back. I can't even think of it. Our freshman,
Frazier.
Yeah, I think he'll put him in and maybe Lucky, but I think he'll pull ETN and try to save him some after after it's comfortable. And I just think, you don't want to put him out there and run him 40 times and let those guys try to hurt him, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the call. I like the low scoring. I mean, very cognizant. You got to be very cognizant about getting off to a fast start against teams like Florida. There'll be a lot of Florida's going to play the underdog very well. They're going to play the Napier saving his job very well. His team will be very pumped up. Lagway will have a lot to prove. I think,
and that may induce mistakes. If our defense can be deceptive and trick him like we've done with some younger quarterbacks, I think he can make some mistakes that'll be in our favor. Some short fields.
Yeah, I can see it happening right now. If we don't get out to a fast start, I can see it right now. It's, we're just going to be more prone for playing behind the 8 ball. And I honestly think it's very, very crucial that this script is similar to the next 5 games. Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Georgia Tech, and then we have a week there. I think we play UMass or something like that, and then Georgia Tech. But I think it plays out to where it looks at, hey, like this is you got to kind of look at this painting, this motif as this is a long-term game plan, right? This game plan now has not become game to game. It's become, we've kind of figured out our identity. We've kind of figured out what works on defense, what doesn't work on defense, what's worked on offense. I think this game plan is very similar to Texas. Very similar because I think
just mix him up.
Yeah, I think that we look the same on defense. I think the offense will have the opportunity to run the ball a little bit more. But I don't think for Bobo's sake and for the sake of keeping this team and understanding what their identity is, I do think we still come out throwing the football. I think the establishing the run will be more of when we run the ball, are we successful? That's going to tell the tape. When we put the ball in ETN or anybody's hands, can we get 5-6 yards, or are we just going to be a team that Florida goes, hey, we're making you win the game? I told you, I think it's Georgia's passing game versus Florida secondary.
That could be very well. They may stack the box and shut our run down and make us throw the ball, and that's fine because I mean we've already proven if you press us, we can throw the ball down the field and move the ball.
Yeah. And I'm going to do this. I haven't looked at a lot of Florida stuff this year, but I do know if they followed the course of the past few years, they're very run heavy. They like to to try to stop the run. They like to play a lot of man press coverage, but they love to, as the game progresses, they like to swap it up a little bit. And my thing is like, can we expose that defense? I think they're not going to care if they get exposed in some areas. They know what they have to do to get us in a bind where we're playing like the underdog, or I should say playing from behind, which they would love to get us in. So This is an extreme. Got to get out there, got to get going like we did at Texas. But that's our game plan for the rest of the year. In order to allow the defense to put the pressure on the offense like it wants to do, like it did at Texas, you got to give it food. You got to feed it. You got to show it the scoreboard to give them the chance to take chances. So that's going to be huge right here. And Lagway, you got to figure out. I think you got to get pressure with 4. The way we got pressure with 4 against Texas, if you can get that pressure against Lagway and make him have to pick that secondary apart, it's a long day for Lagway. Long day for Lagway. And but I like your pick. Low scoring game. I'm kind of Georgia win. I'm a little more points. I do think they're going to score about 13, maybe a touchdown, a couple field goals. I think you see a 35, 38, 13 game.
Dude, I would
somewhere
love
in there.
that.
I'd be happy with a 28-13, like you said. I like did you say 13? You said 28-13?
28-13, yeah.
Yeah, I like a 31 or a 38, somewhere in there. But that's my dream of the passing game, being able to be just, I want to see a complete game, and a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to see a complete game until no, I want to see it if it's the next game. If it's against the worst team in the SEC, I just want to see Georgia put it all together so we know that game exists. And then to have that game, because we saw it a lot, and a lot of big games ahead, but every next game is the big game. So obviously, looking forward to this game. It's going to be good. Jacksonville, 3:30, ABC. Man, we don't have to deal with Gary and Vern. That's great. Be the first Georgia Florida game in a long, long time that I hadn't have to hear them call the game. So for myself, Fish. Sorry, we had Fish for a little while and technical difficulties, so we missed him tonight. But for myself, for Richman, good luck to you. Your daughter heading to the Elite Eight in Columbus, Georgia tomorrow. Best wishes. Hope for health and come back with some wins, man. Hopefully, we're talking about some. Now, when we leave that, will we, we'll either be next week playing for the state championship, or how's that work?
If we make it to the championship, it'll be Saturday.
So we'll know, man. We could be talking to a state champion this time next week.
That'd be something, wouldn't it?
That'd be great, man. We're hoping that's the case, man. Hope we can celebrate with you. Hope we're celebrating a Georgia victory and a state championship is our goal, man. So for myself, missing Mr. Fish, but we'll get you in next week, man. Myself, Richman, and Fish. You guys have a great week. Have a great college football weekend. Hoping for a Georgia win. And as always, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.